Hello everybody and a very warm welcome to the Estoril circuit for a new season of SEAT Leon Eurocup racing. This is the first of 14 races which will take us on a tour of 7 of Europe's finest circuits. It's a 15-lapper here around the former home of the Portuguese Grand Prix, and the grid beginning to fill up. It's turning into a lovely day here at Estoril. A wet and humid practice day yesterday gave way to humid and damp track for qualifying first thing this morning, but really for the first time this weekend the sun is beginning to peek through, and therefore we have got perfect conditions to go racing in what over the past 2 seasons has been firmly established as probably the most competitive single make touring car championship that you'll find anywhere. Spectators here in Estoril enjoying the sunshine and the refreshment, and what better way to spend a Saturday lunchtime than watching the SEAT Leon Eurocup. Thank you very much for joining myself, Ben Evans, here in Portugal for today's race as we take a look at the cars forming up on the grid and lining up in pole position. It is Michele Ascona, the driver who finished 3rd in the championship last year, but this might feel altogether familiar because Ascona was at the front of the field for the first race last year at Paul Ricard. He won it, but didn't win any others. Home interest coming in the form of Lourenco Beirao de Viega, who has been ever present in the championship for the past couple of seasons, but this is the furthest up the field that we have seen him. Niels Langeveld, meanwhile, running for the Baporo Motorsport team. Such driver should not be discounted, and Baporo have been the team to beat, with Paul Rosell running right to the championship for the past 2 seasons. Julien Brichet, well, he will surely start this season as one of the title favourites. Running up in 4th place, the Frenchman, but for bad luck, would have been a champion before. He has been a multiple race winner, as has Stian Poulsen. Poulsen, who came so close to the title in 2014, had a more troubling year in 2015, but again, he will be looking for the title. Lucille Cipriano was one of the Star Lady Trophy racers last year. She also scored an outright race victory, was on the podium 3 times as well, en route to 9th overall in the championship. Certainly Lucille Cipriano, a very strong defensive driver. Mauricio Hernandez, the Costa Rican, well, in 2015, if it wasn't for bad luck, he'd have had absolutely none at all. But when the cards fall in his favour, Hernandez is very rapid, so he should not be discounted for a podium. Jimmy Antunes comes into the championship as a former SEAT Cup France champion. The Swiss driver, very experienced, and most recently in the RCZ Racing Championship in France, where he finished 5th in 2015. Well, the race countdown already well underway. It is 15 laps or 40 minutes. Here's the grid in full then. Michael Ascona and Lourenco Beirao de Viega on the front row. Then Niels Langeveld and Julien Brichet row 2, clear of Stian Poulsen and Lucille Cipriano. Mauricio Hernandez and Jimmy Antunes, and then Facundo de la Mota and Lucas Orrock, British driver, in 10th, clear of Moritz Sandberg and Antonio Coimbra in the SEAT Sport entry. Then Nelson Lukes and Amalia Vignes, with Alex Morgan at the very back of the field in the Wolf Power racing car. But Morgan, who was one of the stars of the championship last year, en route to 5th in the standings, he should look to fight his way up the order as the heat haze shimmers off the cars on the grid. Well, the grid for today's race was set in qualifying this morning, but of course the grid for tomorrow's race will be the top 10 from qualifying in reversal. So what we've seen typically in previous seasons of the SEAT Leon Eurocup is that the first race of the weekend is very, very evenly matched and keenly contested, and then the second race of the weekend, once the grid is reversed, becomes a little bit more of an all-out, gloves-off brawl. But coming into the first race of any given season, it's a slight trip into the unknown. What is very well known, though, however, is how good the SEAT Leon Eurocup car is. 330 brake horsepower, propelled by the 4-cylinder turbo engine. They have a 6-speed gearbox available to them, and they run on the Control Yokohama tyre, which is universally loved by the drivers, as they are about to receive the 1-minute board and then go off on the green flag. We've got one car in trouble at the back of the field. That's Nelson Lukes in the K-Works Racing entry. Looks like it's wheel nuts that are being tightened, and they're desperately trying to clear him from the grid. And this is a, well, it's a slightly difficult one, isn't it? Because you can't wave off a car who hasn't got wheel nuts, and therefore the wheel's going to come off immediately. At the same time, you can't release the cars on their green flag lap if you've still got mechanics working on it. Therefore, I suspect we will see some sort of penalty for Nelson Lukes, as now the grid is indeed cleared. The garages fill up with anxious-looking spectators. It is going to be the white car with the black bumper, Michael Ascona. He starts in pole position. Lourenco Beirao de Viega alongside him on the front row of the grid. That is the car with the black bonnet. Those are going to be two of the premier competitors you would expect to see. And then it's the white cars a little bit further back of Julien Brichet and Stian Poulsen, who have been at the sharp end of the SEAT Leon Eurocup for the past couple of seasons. Julien Brichet in particular last year, he finished 4th in the championship, was only on the podium 3 times and had the misfortune to be caught out in other people's accidents more often than not. Stian Poulsen, a very aggressive competitor, but a multiple race winner in the SEAT Leon Eurocup, and one gets the sense that if he is able to string some good races together, he is going to challenge for the crown. It's a slightly different point structure as well for 2016, if you've been following us for the past couple of seasons, because it's now 25 points paid for the race victory, essentially the same points scoring structure as you get in Formula 1, so 18 points for second place, 15 points for third, and so on and so forth. And in qualifying, whereas you previously got 3 points for the pole position now awards 5 points, second place 4 points, third place 3 points, fourth place 2 points, and you get a point if you qualify in fifth. So that is just opening up the point structure as drivers weaving around, getting a little bit of heat into their tyres. This Estoril circuit, one of the more classic venues on the European racing calendar, hasn't had Formula 1 here since the mid-1990s, but nonetheless presents a formidable challenge. A technical circuit, but not in the way that you perhaps see with some of the more recent Hermann Tilke designed circuits, but lots of long, constant radius, mid-speed turns, and also a couple of corners that can have a sting in the tail, such as the one we just saw, which is the exit from turn 6 as the road begins to fall away. The other real challenge, as we follow Jimmy Antunes, is here into the chicane at turns 9 and 10 before the cars come up onto the tabletop that feeds them through turns 11 and 12, and then around the parabolica to complete the lap. It's a 4.182 kilometre journey, and the SEAT Leon Eurocup to kick off the season. They're going to have to do that 15 times. Last opportunity just to get a little bit of heat into the tyres. Is Facundo Della Motta, the Argentinian driver. He's qualified solidly in the midfield for this first race of the year, because again, with these cars, to all intents and purposes, being absolutely identical, it comes down to the tiniest little setup tweaks that the drivers can make in order to be competitive. Another driver to watch for as the season unfolds is Lucas Oruk, who was the runner-up in last year's UK Volkswagen Cup, but a very, very impressive track record in karting as well for Lucas Oruk. So though he's towards the second half of the field for today's race, I think as the season unfolds through the 7 events, he will look to move to the front of the field. Well, the driver who has qualified at the front and intends to stay there for much of the next 14 races is Michael Ascona. Third in last year's championship, runner-up in the Clio Eurocup the year before that. He started in 2015 so brightly with that dominant victory at Paul Ricard that he never followed up. Is he going to do at least the same trick in the first race of the year again today as Alex Morgan? Wolf Power Racing car rolls into his position at the rear of the grid. Waiting for the signal from the marshal at the rear of the field before we go racing for the first time in the SEAT Leon Eurocup for 2016. There's the green flag, the back of your picture. So the revs are about to rise as the drivers turn their attention towards the gantry, and away we go. It's a good start from Michael Ascona. It's a terrible start from Lorenzo Beirao-de-Vega, or is it? He slots into second place just about. Niels Langeveld jumps into third. Everybody else seems to be fighting for fourth, and Stian Poulsen might just get the jump there, or does he? As they squeeze through turn 1. No contact, they're all cleanly through. It's Ascona who's got the advantage. Oh, and contact behind! And it's Lorenzo Beirao-de-Vega who goes off, and it's Julien Brichel, Jimmy Antunes, who has gone with him. It's Jimmy Antunes, the Swiss driver, who got skittled into the gravel trap, having made a good start. Such a shame for the Portuguese driver, Lorenzo Beirao-de-Vega, in trouble already, and not through the first sector. That means that Ascona leads from Langeveld, then Poulsen up to third. In fourth, Julien Brichel. He has got Lucille Cipriano attached to his rear spoiler. Catch a glimpse of the Andorran racer, Amalia Viñez. She is currently in 10th place. Moritz Sandberg is one of several drivers looking to make a little bit of progress in these early stages. As they come downhill out of turn 6 into turn 7, in and amongst thick of the action. Mauricio Hernandez up into 6th place. He is in pursuit of Brichet and Cipriano. Lucille Cipriano having now got the jump on Julien Brichet. Brichet slips down to 5th. Hernandez in 6th. He's got Alex Morgan ready right behind him in 7th place from the very back of the grid. This is the battle, isn't it? As Lucille Cipriano just slithers a little bit, it means that Julien Brichet can start to ask all the right questions through the parabolica. It also means that Mauricio Hernandez has got a chance, as well as they accelerate out of the final turn through to complete the first lap of the season. And it is the black bonneted car of Hernandez who's got the run on Julien Brichet in the JSB competition entry. And Brichet moves across, covers the inside line. Hernandez might try and dispute this to the outside. Indeed he does, but it leaves the door open to Alex Morgan, who goes for a gap that disappears. Fortunately they avoid contact, as here is another look at the start, and it was a lightning getaway from Jimmy Antunes that possibly would have got him under investigation anyway. Then there was the contact with Lourenco Beirao de Viega. Both cars beached in the gravel trap. And their race, unfortunately, very, very short. The Estoril circuit never usually provides good fortune to the Portuguese drivers. You might recall a year ago, Manuel João was the home favourite in 2015, being elbowed out of the race, really through no fault of his own. Now, here is the fight for 2nd position. Mikel Ascona has already checked off into the distance, but now we've got this battle going on between Niels Langeveld and Stian Poulsen. And it is Poulsen, the white car with the fluorescent yellow wing mirrors, who's right up in pursuit. Then we've got the battle between Lucille Cipriano and Julien Brichet. A bit of a gap back to Mauricio Hernandez in 6th, with Alex Morgan chasing as well. In 8th place is Lucas Orrock, 9th, Amalia Vinez, and Moritz Sandberg now completing the top 10. And Cipriano, we saw time and time again during the course of the 2015 season, very good defensive driver, but both she and Julien Brichet running with the JSB competition team, which means there's probably not much they don't know about what the other driver has done in terms of the setup of the car, and that is going to make things particularly difficult for Julien Brichet. Hernandez powers across the line, 2 laps already reeled off. As the cars just squirm on the Yokohama tyres on the brakes into turn 1. It's only really when you get back to Lucas Orrock in 8th place that you begin to get a little bit of a break in the traffic. Otherwise, it's very congested. They are beginning to pair off just a little bit. Stian Poulsen, quite as close on this occasion to Niels Langeveld as he was on the previous occasion. There is Julien Brichet challenging Lucille Cipriano, but what we have seen throughout the past couple of seasons, of course, is that as these drivers slow themselves down battling, they lose touch with the cars in front. But Morgan has got the run on Mauricio Hernandez. He goes around the outside of him at turn 5, and Alex Morgan should go through. Indeed he does, up into 6th position. Now that might just have to spur on Julien Brichet a little bit, because I suspect that Morgan will be onto terms with Cipriano and Brichet in fairly short order. Run downhill through turns 7 and 8, then in towards the chicane at turn 9. Brichet kicks up the dust. Is that going to be enough to play into an opportunity? Yes, it is. Darting to the inside, Julien Brichet gains the place, elevates up into 4th position. Lovely move from Julien Brichet, but now he's got 1.5 seconds or thereabouts to try and chase down on Stian Poulsen. But he's got plenty of laps at his disposal. We're coming to the end of lap 3. Out to the parabolica, Cipriano runs very wide. To be careful here for track limits. We have seen those being rigorously enforced this weekend. Another driver who's looking to move up the order is Stian Poulsen. Forces Langeveld to take the defensive line into turn 1. As they do battle, it has allowed Mikel Ascona to open up his lead to 3.5 seconds. Another look at the move from Julien Brichet, trailing the brake, steeply uphill through turns 9 and 10. But in the process of finding his way past Cipriano, it now means it's a 2.7 second deficit to Stian Poulsen. Poulsen, though, busy battling with Langeveld, so if they slow themselves down, that might give Brichet the chance to close up, and Julien Brichet's got this 3-car train following in his wake. Work through the parabola at turn 6, and then downhill towards turn 7 again. Langeveld defends, shows just how wide you can make these cars when you really want to. It's coming out of turn 8 and then darting to the inside of the chicane at turn 9, which is proving to be a happy hunting ground, but Stiaan Poulsen not quite close enough, and Langeveld moving as well towards the middle of the road just to preemptively cover off that opportunity. Lucille Cipriano, though, doesn't make the apex at turn 9, and that potentially is going to give Alex Morgan the chance to challenge. Here comes Morgan. That is the car with the fluorescent yellow trim. You don't know where to look, do you? There's so many battles going on throughout the field as they complete the 4th lap of the race. Mikel Ascona leads the fight for 2nd position. Very close. The same going now for the fight for 5th. Cipriano with the red wing mirrors ahead of the fluorescent yellow trim car of Morgan. Fluorescent yellow wing mirrors of Stiaan Poulsen. Shoot the Niels Langeveld. Mauricio Hernandez in 7th. And a big gap back to the Lucas Oruc Facundo Della Motta battle going on a little bit further behind. Oh, and a mistake. Or is it through turn 3? Running very, very wide there was Niels Langeveld. Now, is that going to open up the opportunity for Stiaan Poulsen? Well, Poulsen appreciably closer to the Dutchman than he was this time a lap ago. He's not quite close enough to challenge through turn 5. The pair of them now have the sprint towards the hairpin at turn 6. Langeveld just covers the line, leaves the space for Poulsen if he really wants to force it. We have meanwhile got drive-through penalties for a jump start for Amalia Vinez and Mauricio Hernandez. Jimmy Antunes as well has been awarded one, but of course he is currently parked in the gravel trap at turn 2. That is something of a secondary concern. For Mauricio Hernandez, however, that is taking away the opportunity to score some good points. Steeply uphill through turns 9 and 10, and now Langeveld, just get the sense he's possibly pushed those Yokohama tyres a little bit too hard in the first couple of laps, because the car moving around far more than he'd like it to. The same possibly the case as well for Lucille Cipriano, as she doggedly defends that 5th position. Although the Lady Driver Trophy triumph looking as if that's going to head in her direction, with the drive-through penalty to be served by Amalia Vinez, adding to her challenge. Stiaan Poulsen thinking about challenging Langeveld to the inside at turn 1. But Poulsen here has got the luxury of being able to manage this at his own pace, because with Ascona front of the field, now the best part of 5 seconds clear at the front of the pack, it means that Poulsen and Langeveld, they can fight. They know it's only going to be for 2nd place, and they also know if they fight too hard, too soon, it's going to give Julien Brichet the chance to close up as well and make it a 3-way tussle for the final 2 spots on the podium. So we're just over a third of the way through the first race of the SEAT Leon Eurocup season here in Estoril. Mikel Ascona is our race leader. We are watching, as we have done throughout most of the last 3 or 4 laps, this excellent fight for 2nd place, headed by Niels Langeveld, and then he has got Stiaan Poulsen queuing up behind him, trying to find a way through, and now Langeveld having to defend a little bit more robustly than he perhaps was. Poulsen trying to carry that momentum through turn 8 to look for the challenge into turn 9. Langeveld knows it's coming, moves across, covers the inside line. Can he get the car hooked up uphill? Yes, he can. He blocks out Poulsen very nicely. No way through there for Stiaan Poulsen. He's then going to have to plot his next challenge. Is it going to be through the Parabolica? It's not going to be close enough, I don't think, on this occasion. So he might then instead try to use the toe and look to challenge on the brakes into turn 1 as they swing out of the Parabolica now. And Poulsen is a little bit closer to Langeveld, but he's not close enough, and more importantly, he's not gaining along the start and finish straight. 3/10 of a second between them as they concluded the lap. And Poulsen now looks to challenge on the brakes into turn one. He's going to force the issue. Launches the move to the inside. Can he get the car stopped and turned in on the line? Yes, he can. Although Langeveld looks for the cutback, draws alongside Poulsen as they head into turn two, regains the place. Thought that was done and dusted for Stian Poulsen for a moment. Instead, Langeveld busy defending. And now this is going to start to bring Julien Brichet into the mix. There is Brichet at the back of your picture in fourth position. You really get the feeling that this phase of the race, it's Stian Poulsen who's got the quicker car than Langeveld, but he just hasn't quite been able to find the move. It looked as if it could have been on from open there into turn one, but it was good defensive driving from Langeveld. He forced Poulsen to take too tight a line. Poulsen's learned the lesson from that. He doesn't try to force the issue into turn six, but you can see how much of a tighter, crisper line Poulsen is able to take. Shows he's got the grip underneath him. He's got the luxury of picking his line. Langeveld's having to defend because he knows if he leaves a SEAT's width to the inside at any corner that Poulsen will be through like a shot. Out of turn 8 on the brakes into the chicane again. This is where Langeveld was very impressive last time round in just blocking out Stian Poulsen. He does exactly the same thing again. So the Norwegian slightly thwarted in his efforts. Behind, we've got Julien Brichet fourth, Lucille Cipriano is fifth. Sixth is Alex Morgan, seventh Facundo de la Motta, eighth Nelson Lukes, ninth is Lucas Orrock, and 10th is Antonio Coimbra. They are all chasing our race leader, Michele Ascona. So once more it comes down to the sprint towards turn one. Poulsen almost made it stick last time around. He knows what he needs to do. So does Langeveld. On this occasion, Poulsen is going to look for the cutback, tries to force Langeveld into the defensive line. Alex Morgan, likewise, in sixth place, continues to be frustrated. His attempts to find a way past Lucille Cipriano as we are approaching half race distance. And now Poulsen looks for the move. The inside at turn three almost happened. I think the camera angle foreshortened it just a little bit as the gap suddenly went away. Langeveld and Poulsen running nose to tail as they come out of turn four. The heat haze shimmers off the car as they swoop through turn five. Head towards turn six, just moving across, ghosting across even. It's Niels Langeveld. He's going to make this difficult for Stian Poulsen as behind Cipriano and Morgan continue to circulate in tandem. This is the fight for fifth and sixth. Back to the fight for second place. This is proving to be a masterclass of defensive driving so far for Niels Langeveld. Again, the gap doesn't open to the inside at the chicane. Again, Langeveld able to just block out Poulsen as they climb uphill. This last lap, their pace has dropped off enough to begin to allow Julien Brichet to close. Brichet just 1.9 seconds back, but crucially was the best part of a second quicker than Langeveld and Poulsen last time through. But now, out of the Parabolica, Stian Poulsen is much, much closer to Niels Langeveld than he was this time a lap ago. Again, he's not able to really close up in the toe as they head steeply downhill towards the heavy braking zone at turn one. Just 7 laps remaining. Poulsen can't find the way past. Langeveld just positions the car absolutely perfectly. He is doing everything he needs to do, which is making Stian Poulsen do all the hard work. Here is the race leader, Michele Ascona. His lead now 6.7 seconds. You've got Langeveld and Poulsen running nose to tail as they negotiate turn four, sprint along behind the paddock area through the very quick kink at turn 5, and then turn 6, another place where you could think about making an overtaking move. Julien Brichet only gained a couple of tenths of a second on them last time through. Shows the pace of this battle is still pretty high. Downhill out of turn 6 and then into the right-hander at turn 7. This is very mature performance from Stian Poulsen certainly a view that maybe impetuosity had got the better of him on a couple of occasions in the last couple of seasons, but it's not been the case so far today in Estoril. Instead, Poulsen has been managing this race very nicely and hasn't forced a brave move on Langeveld. That said, he was a little bit slower than Langeveld coming out of the chicane, and as a result, the Dutchman has got a bigger advantage over Stiaan Poulsen than on the previous occasion. What about Cipriano and Alex Morgan? Fight for 5th and 6th. And again, Morgan is finding exactly the same, really, as Stiaan Poulsen, that it's one thing to catch the car in front, it's quite another to find your way past it. Morgan thinks about lining up the move into the first corner. He dives deep, continues to look to the inside, but Cipriano moves across, covers the racing line, and there's no way through. As we are heading towards the final third of the race, Michael Ascona is the race leader from Niels Langeveld and Stiaan Poulsen. Then it's Julien Brichet in 4th. We're watching the fight for 5th and 6th between Lucille Cipriano and Alex Morgan. 7th place is Facundo de la Motta, 8th place is Antonio Coimbra, 9th is Nelson Lukes, and it's Lucas Oruck who currently completes the top 10, and those in points-paying places. Morgan follows in pursuit of Cipriano as they exit turn 5 towards turn 6, and Morgan might be close enough to pull the pin here. Thinks about it, but both drivers experienced in these SEAT Leon Eurocup cars, they know exactly how late they can jump on the brakes, and therefore Morgan, particularly with an eye towards points in this early stage of the season, thinks better of forcing the issue with an unnecessarily risky move. A pair of them swinging through turns 7 and 8 on the brakes again for the chicane, swinging uphill at turns 9 and 10. And as with Stiaan Poulsen a couple of laps ago, you can just get the feeling that Morgan's got that slightly crisper turn in, slightly more grip in the Yokohama tyres. Now, is that going to be enough to sustain him through the final 5 laps of the race? The race leader Ascona already through turn 1. The battle for 2nd place about to be rejoined. Julien Brichet just hasn't quite been able to close the gap back to Niels Langeveld. He's some 2.6 seconds back, but he's well clear of the fight for 5th between Cipriano and Alex Morgan. And with the drive-through penalty from Mauricio Hernandez, means there's now quite a big gap back to Facundo de la Motta in 7th position. Round turn 3 for Cipriano. This is Cipriano, who started her career like so many drivers in single-seaters in French Formula 4 before racing in the incredibly competitive Volkswagen Scirocco Cup in Germany before making the switch across to the SEAT Leon Eurocup. Morgan in his 2nd season of pan-European competition, having been a multiple race winner and championship contender in the UK Clio Cup. It's fairly safe to say that Cipriano's results until the start of last year hadn't really suggested how she was quite going to spring on to be a front runner in the championship, as contact between Nelson Lukes and Antonio Coimbra was a little bit of an assault, you might argue, from Lukes to the inside of Coimbra. That was a gap that was never really there and was always going to close, and as a result, not surprisingly, car 50 is under report to race control, and that's Lucas Oruck in trouble, who thumps into the Armco barrier, having run out of road, plunging downhill. And that is a fairly hefty hit, as you can see by the damage done to the barrier. It's a great shame for Oruck. He was up inside the top 10. That was coming out turn 7. Here we see it, and he was just defending for Antonio Coimbra. The car understeering out wide, the grass very, very slick, and thump into the barrier. Another look at it from this angle. Doesn't look any prettier, but they build these SEAT cars very strong. So hopefully not too much damage. Nelson Lukes Another driver in trouble, possibly a consequence of that contact with Antonio Coimbra. And suddenly, as we head towards the latter stages of the race, it is starting to become a little bit ragged out there. Talking of ragged, there is the remnants of Stian Poulsen's window. The debris that we saw flying along the straight is clearly half of it. There is the other half of it, hanging outside of Poulsen's car. As they head into the waved yellow flag area at turn 7 as the recovery work is underway on Lucas Oruk's car. Seems to suggest that Lucas is okay, which is the most important thing. As Poulsen swings out of the chicane, the window flapping in the breeze, it's not going to be a major deterrent in terms of additional drag, but it's certainly going to be a distraction. It might cost him a couple of crucial hundredths of a second as we head towards the latter stages of the race. Mikel Ascona has led every single metre, put the car in pole position, has converted it absolutely to perfection. The key, though, for the Spaniard is going to be, can he kick on and repeat this performance throughout the course of the season? Because last year he started the year in this imperious fashion at Paul Ricard, finished third in the championship, only had 4 trips to the podium and never really looked like he was going to win another race. Of course, tomorrow he's going to have to do it all from 10th on the grid, because that is when the reverse grid race kicks in. For now, can enjoy the luxury of empty track around him. It's Mikel Ascona, PCR sport car, dominating the race, 6.2 seconds clear of the fight for second place. It's been raging throughout the race, but ever since that point a couple of laps ago where Stian Poulsen lost touch with Langeveld coming out of turn 10, he's never really been able to quite regain that ground. He certainly shouldn't be doing it now as they swoop downhill towards turn 7. That's where we've got the waved yellow flags for the incident involving Lucas Oruk. Which looks like it is in the throes of being completed in terms of recovery. So hopefully we'll see that yellow flag retracted before too long. Ascona, Langeveld and Poulsen. Langeveld and Poulsen swooping into the Parabolica now. And then we've got the gap back to Julien Brichet, who's in an increasingly distant 4th place. Lucille Cipriano and Alex Morgan continuing their battle as Stian Poulsen flashes his headlights and Niels Langeveld. Well, that possibly could be an acknowledgement of his team on the pit wall. He closes up onto turns with Langeveld as they hit the brakes in towards turn 1. Here is Julien Brichet in 4th. It's going to be more solid points for Julien Brichet, but just got to worry, or he will have a slight worry, I would suggest, that having been on the podium 6 times in 2014, that became 3 times in 2015, and he's not really had podium pace at all in this race. Even when Langeveld and Poulsen were busy battling with each other, wasn't really able to close the gap down too much. Talking of that battle for second, it's now well and truly come alive, and Stian Poulsen continues to flash his headlights at Niels Langeveld. Not quite sure what he's looking to achieve by that, unless there was possibly something off camera that we missed that has made him frustrated. He can now challenge at full speed through turn 7 because the yellow flags have gone in there. And it's the point of the circuit where they arrive now downhill. There is the gap back to Julien Brichet. Brichet's got a good 6 seconds as well over Lucille Cipriano and Alex Morgan in the fight for 5th and 6th. About to start the final lap of the season opener in the SEAT Leon Eurocup, and it's been a very good race to start the year. Mikel Ascona has dominated it, but there have been some fantastic fights going on behind, and this one for second place is going to go all the way to the flag as they swing through the Parabolica. Anxious faces from SEAT on the pit wall. Now hopefully this is going to be a clean final lap in the fight for the last 2 spots on the rostrum. They run downhill now to challenge into turn 1, and Langeveld has to defend from Poulsen, and Poulsen's determined to force it to the inside, breaks desperately late, and is able to block out the Dutchman. That's a lovely move from Poulsen if he can pull it off, because Langeveld looks to challenge downhill towards turn 2, and Poulsen would appear to have made it stick. Brilliantly judged. He had to go for something late and brave, but now the boot is on the other foot. He is defending from Langeveld, who gives him a little bit of assistance climbing uphill out of turn 3. That was beautifully blocked, in fact, by Poulsen. Just eased off the pace, ensured that Langeveld couldn't get the switch back. As they loop round out of turn 4, through the kink at turn 5. Langeveld, having been in second place really throughout the entirety of the race, be very frustrated to have lost it to a very bold move to start the final lap, but it's not done and dusted just yet. There's still about half a lap remaining as they exit turn 6, head downhill towards the lowest point of the circuit, and the camera angles don't quite give you a sense of how abruptly the elevation changes around this Estoril circuit. As they swing through turn 8 into 9 and 10, and then steeply uphill. There's also an investigation that has just started on Niels Langeveld as well, according to our timing screen. Here is Michael Ascona, our race leader, and about to be race winner, because he accelerates out of the final turn. The checkered flag is poised and ready, and Michael Ascona completes a perfect race. He takes victory in the opening round of the SEAT Leon Eurocup, converting that pole position. Second place is going to go the way of Stian Poulsen, with Niels Langeveld completing the podium. Delighted Poulsen after that brave last lap manoeuvre, and then Julien Brichet across the line in 4th. 5th is going to go the way of Alex Morgan, with Facundo de la Motta in 6th, and Lucille Cipriano fading to 7th on the final lap, but Cipriano winning the Lady Driver Trophy as well. So clearly quite a few last lap incidents, but none of that of any concern at all for Michael Ascona. He has delivered an absolutely perfect performance, got the car off the line exactly as he needed to, and has converted that pole position into, by the standards of the SEAT Leon Eurocup, a fairly dominant victory of a winning margin of just over 7.5 seconds. Well, we will have the second race of the weekend from the SEATs due to have lights out at 2:40 tomorrow, so we'll be beginning our coverage about 10 minutes before that at 2:30 local time. Let's have a look then at the final results. So victory for Michael Ascona, second place to Stian Poulsen, Niels Langeveld completing the podium from Julien Brichet and Alex Morgan. Facundo de la Motta making ground on the last lap as Lucille Cipriano slipped into 7th, Moritz Sandberg in 8th, ahead of Mauricio Hernandez and Antonio Coimbra, and then Amalia Vignes, Nelson Lukes, Lucas Oruk, Jimmy Antunes and Lorenzo Beirao de Viega all in the wars. As a result, of course, that is going to give Michael Ascona the early championship lead. 5 points for pole position, 25 points for the race victory, and that is just what he needs to get his championship off to a good start. Hand out of the window, acknowledging the applause of the crowd and the marshals. It was a super scrap, wasn't it, between Stian Poulsen and Niels Langeveld. Arguably one of the highlights of the race. The pair of them were battling side by side, nose to tail, for almost all of the 15 laps. Eventually it was Poulsen who prevailed with that brave move at the start of the final lap through turn 1. He rehearsed it at mid-race. It didn't quite work out, but he did what he needed to do on that last lap by getting the car stopped mid-apex. It meant it was all but impossible for Langeveld to get the switch back on him, and therefore he was then primed to be able to defend throughout the course of the final lap. So Ascona rolls into Parc Ferme, celebrate the spoils of victory, unclips the belts, will then jump out of the car, I'm sure, to celebrate with the PCR Sport team. Applause and handshakes all around. Perfect start to the season for Skåne. Don't think Stian Poulsen could be too disappointed with this afternoon's work either. Handshakes all around for Poulsen. That was a fighting drive. Some brave moves as well from Poulsen. And for Niels Langeveld, an excellent third place. Might have been a little bit more, but it was a good, clean, competitive battle. And we will look forward to them being back into action tomorrow. And that is where we'll have the top 10 for qualifying reversed. It promises to be another very entertaining race, particularly as we'll see some of the drivers who got into bother a little bit in the early stages of today's race being able to have another shot at success. We will very shortly be hearing from our race winner, Michael Skåne, as he extricates himself from his helmet and hands device. And then the drivers will be heading up to the first podium of the season. Chance to enjoy in super slow motion. Podium finishers, as they fought their way around Estoril. We will hear from our race winner in a moment's time, and that is Michael Skåne.
Michael, pole and victory to start the season. I mean, that's the best thing that you can ask for, right?
Yes, this result for all the equipe is the best. We work very hard and a lot of to be here in this position, and we are really happy, all the team.
What do you expect for tomorrow?
Tomorrow I start in P10, and it's very difficult race because there are a lot of good drivers, and my goal is to get some points, some good points.
Thanks a lot. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
A very happy race winner, Michael Skåne, and this is how he did it. Perfect conversion of pole position, and that meant that he was able to lead the cavalry charge down to the first corner. Behind there was plenty of jostling for position, and Stian Poulsen was one of the early beneficiaries, as was Jimmy Antunes, but he made contact with Lorenko Bear out of Jaeger. Both of them got fired off into the gravel trap. Their race is essentially over before they completed 2 corners. There was some good scrabbling behind between the JSB competition teammates. Julien Brichet and Lucille Cipriano. There's also Gunnar Motta and Lucas Oruk were busy going toe-to-toe. The story of the race, though, was the scintillating tussle between Niels Langeveld and Stian Poulsen. A pair of them looking to swap places time after time, as Lucas Oruk was an unfortunate retiree, getting no traction on the grass and thumping into the tyre wall to end his race at 2/3 distance. This was the talking point on the last lap. A brilliantly brave move from Stian Poulsen, and he was just able to close out the fight back from Niels Langeveld. None of that was of any concern for Michael Skåne, because he came through to score his second career SEAT Leon Eurocup victory, take the spoils in the first race of the year, and he did it whilst also claiming pole position and the fastest lap. Stian Poulsen finished in second, Niels Langeveld completed the podium, and Lucille Cipriano was our Lady Driver Trophy winner. And as a result, plenty for the SEAT Sport team to smile about, as the drivers waiting to be announced up on to the first rostrum of the year. So to third place for Niels Langeveld. Very impressive performance. Runner-up, Stian Poulsen. And good to see he and Langeveld shaking hands. I think they'll have thoroughly enjoyed that battle. And Michael Skåne enjoys the applause of the crowd as he takes his place on the top step of the rostrum, where he is joined by Lucille Cipriano on the Lady Drivers Trophy. Spanish national anthem in honour of Mikel Ascona, victorious in the first of 14 races for this season's SEAT Leon Eurocup. To move on to the presentation of the trophies. And as ever in the SEAT Leon Eurocup, always a very attractive trophy, modelled on the wing mirror of the SEAT Leon car. And smiles all around on the podium. Comes up from Poulsen. You can see that drivers taking spills of water to the rostrum. Suggests just how hot it is in the cockpit of these cars, even though it's not particularly warm outside. And Lucille Cipriano once more the top lady driver. So the drivers about to celebrate on the podium, which means it's time to say thanks for joining us today here in Estoril for the SEAT Leon Eurocup. We'll see you at 2:30 tomorrow, but until now, it's goodbye from Portugal.